Hello, grade 7 students. Today's activity or today's chapter is about the relations among the conditions of the environment, activity, and functions of nutrition. In the activity 1, we want to learn how organisms or living organisms are classified based on the variation of their internal temperature, depending if they are affected by the external temperature or no. See, so we want to classify the organisms. Let me show you how can we classify them. So the living organisms, are classified into two categories or into two classes: homeotherms or homeothermic organisms and poikilothermic organisms. So we have two kinds of organisms: homeothermic organisms and poikilothermic organisms. Also, we can call this one, these ones, the homeothermic organisms, as warm-blooded, and also poikilothermic organisms can be called also cold-blooded. How can we know if any organism is homeothermic or poikilothermic organism? So we have to see if the body temperature of this organism is affecting or not by the external temperature. So we have to focus on two elements: something called the external temperature, which is the temperature of the environment, which is the temperature of the outside affected by the weather and the climate, and the internal temperature means the body temperature. So as you can see here, homeothermic organisms have the same body temperature. So when the body temperature or the internal temperature stays the same, if we vary the external temperature, so we can call that this organism is a homeothermic organism. But poikilothermic organisms have variable body temperature, not constant body temperature at all, if we vary the external temperature. Let me show you هيك examples. Okay, let's start by our definition of each one of them. Homeotherms: an animal or an organism whose internal temperature is constant and doesn't depend and it's not affected by the external medium. So when the internal temperature stays constant, so we can say that this organism is a homeotherm or a homeothermic organism. Poikilothermic organism, an organism or animal whose internal temperature is variable, because it varies as we vary the external medium. Look at this example. أكيد نحن بده يكون الactivity of them is affected. حنحكي عنها later on كمان. Look at these documents C and D that we have here. We are working on a lizard. Okay. And here you can see the temperature of the air, which means the external temperature, and the temperature of the lizard, which means the internal temperature. So as we vary the external temperature, عم نغير external temperature from a cold temperature to a warm or a little bit hot temperature. Look at the temperature of the lizard. It's not the same. It's variable. So when the internal temperature is variable, as we vary the external temperature, so this organism is a poikilothermic organism لأنه عم بتغير. And look at the activity of this organism. It's not the same during a day. عنا هون from the morning till تقريبا 7 o'clock، يعني ما بعرف هيدا أظن نقول sunset، يعني أو يعني للعشاء فينا نقول. Look at the internal temperature of the lizard. حرارة الليزرد عم بتكون is variable، منا the same. مرة from 10 to 18، مرة 18 to 22. It's not the same. حرارته مش هي بذاتها. فإذا internal temperature is variable، عم بتغير during the day أو during the periods of the day. حنشوف ال activity of this organism اللي هو مين؟ قلنا الليزرد. هل هو active عم يتحرك مش عم يتحرك، عنده نشاط ما عنده نشاط؟ عم نلاقي إنه here it's not active, here it's partially active، هون mostly active، هون completely active، partially active، completely، halfly active، inactive or not active. يعني ال activity is affected by the internal temperature which is affected by the external temperature. يعني النشاط تبعه للأنيمال عم يتأثر بالحرارة تاعت جسمه، وحرارة جسمه عم تتأثر بالحرارة الخارجية. اوكي، فإذا هيدا هو poikilothermic organism. Identify the type of the lizard based on the activity or its activity that can be affected by the external temperature. If can be affected. So lizards are poikilothermic organisms since their internal temperature and their activity are affected by the external temperature. So as the external temperature increases, their body temperature increases and then the activity is affected too. فإذا هيدي ما تحفظوها، بس هيك افهموها، ما بهمني أبدا تحفظوها، ما بجيب هيك definitions. بهمني أنا تعرفوا إنه هيدا homiothermic organism أو poikilothermic organism، بتقولوا لي إنه ال internal temperature هي عم تتأثر بال external temperature و is enough يعني. Now we want to work on two tables. عنا F and G. شو عم يعطينا ال F؟ ال external temperature وال internal temperature لorganism called a vole. Look at as we vary the external temperature عم تتغير ال external temperature. عطولي هي باردة وشوي هون مقبولة يعني، بس حتى برد 9 degree Celsius باردة كمان. Look at the internal temperature of the wall. It's the same 38. كيف ما تغيرت الاكسترنال internal تبقى مثل ما هي. اوكي، هم حاشتغل عليه. فإذا as we vary the external temperature the internal temperature stays constant 38. فإذا هيدا homiothermic organism. اوكي، والاكتيفيتي بتاعته ما بتتأثر. هيدا الاكزامبل بهمني كتير نعمل له باراجراف، بهمني كتير نعمل له interpretation، بهمني كتير اعمل له نعرف اذا homiothermic او poikilothermic organism. هيدا الاكسرسايز هيك بده يجي بالامتحان بهيدا الليفل، يعني بهيدا المستوى. The table below represents the variation of the internal temperature of a grass snake as function of the external temperature. So we are varying the external temperature and then measuring the internal temperature of the grass snake. Interpret the obtained results. I have to start by when or as the external temperature increases from 10 to 25 degrees Celsius, the internal temperature of the grass snake increases from 8 to 20 degrees Celsius. فإذا أنا إذا ما بلشت by as the external temperature حياخد 0. focus on this one بس بهيدي الكيسز، لأنه لما external temperature كبرت from 10 to 25 degrees Celsius كما the internal temperature of the grass snake increases from 8 to 20 degrees Celsius. Thus the internal temperature is affected by the external temperature. يعني ال internal temperature للgrass snake بتأثر بال external temperature. Draw out if the grass snake is a homiothermic or poikilothermic organism or animal. أكيد هو poikilothermic organism. No need to justify. أي حدا بيعمل justification draw out أو conclude حياخد minus. فإذا draw out no need to justify my answer. Just أنا بدي استنتج. Correct the following sentence. When the environmental temperature changes، لما ال environmental temperature changes يعني ال external temperature changes the internal temperature of the homeothermic or animal stays variable. فإذا internal body temperature of what? of homeothermic organisms اللي هن بيبقوا 38 بيبقوا constant عفوا stays بتتغير ولا بتبقى مثل ما هي للهوميوثيرميك organisms constant. يعني بغير من برا external temperature بينما internal temperature كيف حتبقى constant. يعني مثلا إذا بلشنا مثلا 37 أو 30 أوكي هون 37 هون 37 وهون 37 هول عم بحكي عن مين؟ عن هول. اوكي بس اكيد ما عم بحكي عن جراس سنيك، انا عم بحكي عن اكزامبل تاني اللي هو مين؟ هوميوثيرميك اورجانيزم. ما تضيعوا يعني هوميوثيرميك اورجانيزم البادي تمبرتشر ستيز كونستنت لما منغير الانفايرمنتال تمبرتشر. ليكو كيف بلشت باي 1 اور از